You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys coming by and spending time with us, being part of the lively, jovial, interesting brain building, is that a thing? I don't know. It is now, damn it, because I just did it. Poetic license is, I think, what I can get away with there. But that's the great thing about the Chris Voss Show. It makes you so smart and brain builds, and there's so much intelligence that goes on. You're just going to be blown away. And you walk around, and people will be like, holy crap, how did you get to be so brilliant? And you're going to be like, I listen to the Chris Voss Show. It's pretty brilliant. We had an interesting thing that went down today. The SCOTUS shot down, I believe, affirmative action at colleges. So some interesting SCOTUS ruling. Yesterday, we had Michael Waldman of the Brennan Center, named after one of the famous judges in the 60s and 70s, was on the show promoting his book, The Supermajority, How the Supreme Court Divided America. So you may want to check that out because there are some interesting things happening on that front. And watch for our upcoming interview with CNN's Jake Tapper on the show. We, of course, always have the most amazing authors, and we don't allow anybody who's not amazing on the show. So it's only amazing authors, except for me, of course. I just have a book or two. And she is out with her latest book, and these are hot books. I mean, these sell a lot. Novels, they always do well. She is the author of Harlem After Midnight, a Canary Club mystery. Comes out August 29th, 2023, and she's a multi-book author. Louise Hare is on the show with us today. She'll be talking to us about her latest, hottest book, and I guess everyone just loves this thing. They bought a ton of the last ones, and so she's up again on deck. She is a London-based writer and has an MA in creative writing from Birkbeck University of London. Originally from Warrington, the capital is the inspiration for much of her work, including this lovely city which began life after a trip into the deep-level shelter below Clapham Common. This lovely city was featured on the inaugural BBC Two TV book club show Between the Covers and has received multiple accolades, securing Louise's place as an author to watch. Welcome to the show, Louise. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you.
And it's wonderful to have you as well. Congratulations on the new book. And give us a .com or social media, wherever you want people maybe to follow you on the interwebs.
Yeah, so I have my website, which is just louisehare.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Lou R. Hare.
There you go. And we got you coming to us from across the pond, as they like to say. I don't know. And do people start saying God Save the Queen over there or King over there, or do people just not care?
It's sort of confusing. I haven't been in a position where I've needed to sing the anthem since the Queen died, but I think the first time I do, like the first time I go to like a sports event or something, it's going to be a little bit confusing.
Do they change the lyrics? Do you have to say God Save the Queen or King?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm so used to saying it.
Yes, it should be easy, but like she was Queen for a long time.
Yeah.
God Save the Queen for decades. To change it, suddenly you're like, oh.
There you go. Yeah, and plus, I mean, she seemed like a nice person. I don't know about the new guy, but I guess you guys will work it out over there. It's your guys. I mean, I'm just glad you guys stuck with the prime minister, past a couple of weeks for a change now. So that's been working out, I think, pretty good for you guys. Anyway, enough about England, I guess, or London. Tell us what motivated you to write this latest book.
So the latest book, I mean, obviously it's the second in a series. So the main motivation is continue the adventure. So my first book, which is called Miss Aldridge Regrets, is about a British woman. She's mixed race, sort of can pass as white. And it's a murder mystery set on the Queen Mary.
Oh, wow.
At the end of that book, she's in New York. So then you're thinking, okay, what happens to her next? Well, she's in New York. Obviously, she's going to go to Harlem. There's people that she meets in the first book who there's a reason that she goes to Harlem anyway. So I had those characters already built in. Mm-hmm. And then I've always been really fascinated as well with the book Passing by Nella Larsen. And so I wanted to sort of pay a little bit of tribute to that book. So people that have read that book will recognize a couple things in this book that I've included, but it's just like a fun murder mystery. And I had a lot of fun sort of researching 1930s New York, and actually sort of turn of the century New York. I've got some chapters that are set in 1908, which was really interesting. New York changed a lot in those sort of 30 years.
There you go. An interesting time. And in your first book, she was on the Queen Mary then. Miss Aldridge Regrets, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. The Queen Mary. Have you been on the Queen Mary?
No, So I did email Cunard because I was like, is there any chance of a discount? Because I can't really afford it. And they said no.
Oh, darn it. It is a beautiful ship. I've spent hours there. I used to go out with my camera, go jaunting as a photographer, and I would spend hours photographing the ship. And it's an extraordinary, beautiful ship that's captured in time. It kind of gives you that feel of the Titanic, but it's beautiful. So if you get a chance to go, make sure you go see the bar. The bar is such, what was the Art Deco, whatever that 1920s sort of look is. There's a lot of it in LA, but it's such a beautiful ship, and there's a romanticism to it when you walk around it. I've just spent hours. They make a beautiful buffet breakfast too. But Harlem After Midnight, tell us a little bit more about your protagonist. I believe that's Lena.
It is, yeah. So as I said, she's mixed race, but she's sort of spent a lot of her life running away from, I guess, her blackness, like because she can pass as white. It's sometimes been a lot easier for her. And in London at that time, the black community was very small. So when she's on the ship is the first time she's sort of learning to confront the reality of what denying her roots has done to her. And then now in this book, she's sort of landing in Harlem, staying with a black family, meeting all these different people and sort of discovering herself. But then obviously there has to be a sort of a murder or / accident that happens. Like, is it murder? Is it not? For her to sort of investigate. She's not really an investigator, but she's sort of always in the wrong place at the wrong time, and people are dying.
Sounds like my life on Fridays. I don't know what that means, but don't look in my backyard. So it's a bit of a thriller, a bit of a mystery sort of novel.
Yeah, I think there's mysteries from her past, which is why there's sort of a dual timeline. There's stuff. Her father was from New York originally, and she's never been. So she's trying to investigate him. She knows there are secrets that she finds out about him in the first book that she's now trying to uncover. But then something happens. I mean, it opens with a woman falling from a building. That's how the book opens, and you don't know who the woman is yet, or what's happened to her, or if she's even alive. So that's the sort of start point. And then you sort of go back a couple of weeks to when Lena first arrives.
There you go. A body falls from a townhouse window in Harlem. Hi, folks. Here's Voss here with a little station break. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. We'll resume here in a second. I'd like to invite you to come to my coaching, speaking, and training courses website. You can also see our new podcast over there at chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Over there, you can find all the different stuff that we do for speaking engagements if you'd like to hire me, training courses that we offer, and coaching for leadership, management, entrepreneurism, podcasting, corporate stuff. With over 35 years of experience in business and running companies as CEO. And be sure to check out chrisvossleadershipinstitute.com. Now back to the show. There you go. So is it set in kind of the roaring sort of that early age of there was like, what was it, the roaring 20s that were kind of in that whole genre era? Or?
So it's the mid 1930s. So it's 1936. Okay. So the Apollo Theatre is the amateur night still a huge thing. There is like a tiny cameo from Ella Fitzgerald because they found out that she was playing in Harlem on the exact date that I needed to send Lena to a nightclub. So I was like, perfect. So yeah, I've sort of embraced that sort of era. So that sort of early Ella Fitzgerald and and Louis Armstrong kind of music. That's the sort of soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. And I guess part of the mystery is her love interest.
Yeah. So he's the love interest that she met in the first book. And people just loved him. His name is Will. And he's her connection to Harlem. So that's where he's from. So she meets his family, his friends. But of course, it's a mystery. So it turns out he's got secrets of his own that he hasn't sort of told her. So she has to decide, like, does she trust him? Does she not? There's lots of question marks.
The Beauty and the Beast. Everything revolves around the Beauty and the Beast story. Taming the Beast with beauty and femininity, I suppose. It's interesting. So, did you base any of the characters on anyone? Did you just create an amalgamation, or did you kind of just make them up as you wanted them?
I mean, for the most part, I just sort of made them up as they worked. But I do think because it's sort of written in first person, like you're reading everything from Lena's point of view. There's definitely some of me in her. So quite often she does some stupid stuff. Like because she just panics, and then she drinks a lot and she smokes and she does all of this stuff that she shouldn't really be doing. And someone said to me, a reader from the first book was like, but like she's not very sensible. And I just said, well, I imagined myself in a situation with all these murders happening and I didn't know what was going on and what would I do? And then I was like, well, if there's a bar there, I'm probably going to go and get a drink first and then hope it all goes away. So sometimes that's what Lena does.
It sounds like Fridays at my house too. Yeah, once again.
Oh, yeah, I was just being realistic. I was like, most of us would do this. And then afterwards you would think, actually, this is not sensible. I should probably get out of the way or try and figure out what's happening.
Well, the other thing is too, is if you're going to be sensible, and logical, I mean, it'd be a really short book. Where would the adventure be, right?
Exactly. That's what I think.
So, what do you see for this character in the series you're doing? This is 2 of 2 in your Canary Club mystery series. What do you see? Do you see a future with what you're doing? Are you working on a next book yet? We have some authors, they pump out books like every 3 months, it seems.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about a third book. I think there's each book can be read separately, but I always like to have little threads that you can sort of pick up in a next book. So for example, there's a best friend that she left back in London who did something terrible. And that's not even talked about in the second book. So I was like, actually quite cool to sort of pick at that thread and see what happens with that. And there's quite a lot of things that Lena could do. I mean, she's sort of mid-20s. She just got a passport for the first time before she came to New York. So she's sort of, the world is her oyster. She could go anywhere and do anything potentially. So yeah,
There you go. It sounds like she needs to work on making better friends, though. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kidding. But that's the beauty of the stories and the adventures, and we like to see people go on that hero's journey where they have to meander through everything, go through cathartic times, and hang out with murderers. You learn a few things or something. I don't know. Sounds like Fridays at my house again. I don't know. That's today's callback joke on the show. People are like, what's going on at Chris's house? Maybe there's a novel there. I don't know. So what do you find readers really love about the character? It sounds like you've gotten some feedback, and they really loved your first book. Of course, it sold really well. What do you hear from your readers? It's kind of interesting how they kind of have their own take on everything, huh?
Yeah. Like I said, a lot of people were like, she's just not sensible. I think that's fine. I mean, it's a fair comment. I think what I've enjoyed is people seeing, because it's sort of a golden age mystery, like I was sort of angling for that sort of Agatha Christie sort of vibe. It's definitely not written in that style, just to warn anyone who's hoping for that. But it's that sort of vibe with the glamour, and I love those like the Poirot TV shows when he's like on the Orient Express or Death on the Nile. So that's sort of the vibe that I think people have enjoyed, but also having a woman of color in that situation where she's sort of traveling in first class. I think it's just, I like to take things that I love, but then put my own sort of spin on it. So I think some people have been enjoying that. And yeah, I feel like anyone who loves historical mystery has enjoyed it. So yeah.
There you go. And I imagine someone of mixed race, there's lots of different ways you can play that and go, especially in that era of time.
Yeah, I mean, it was really fun sort of researching, for example, the differences between attitudes in the UK compared to the US at that time, and her sort of deciding how to present herself in different situations. So because she's traveling in first class on the Queen Mary, she basically, someone goes, oh, you look sort of Italian. And so she just sort of goes with that because it's easier than trying to explain, or if someone has a problem. But then sort of the love interest, Will, the reason that I sort of created him was I wanted her to have an ally and someone who knew who she was, that she could talk to and be honest about stuff. And so that was why I sort of created him, because he wasn't in the original plan at all, but then he really was. And I think a lot of readers have really loved that relationship and that aspect of that relationship.
There you go. So what do you hope readers come back with as they read your book and come away with? And can they read this as a standalone if they haven't read the first one, or do they need to go read the first one first?
I think, I wrote it so that it would work as a standalone. So there's very few references to the first book. So the feedback I've had of early readers that haven't read the first book is that they still enjoyed this book. So nice. I think that should be all good. So yeah, I mean, it was hard to do. It was really hard. It's the first time I've ever written a sequel of anything. But, I decided early on you got to fulfill that need that the reader has if they've read the first book, that they get everything that they want out of it. But then you also want people to be able to read it on its own. They
really fall in love with the character and what the character kind of does, their kind of whole modus of operandi. And, we have authors on the show. I think there's like 30 or 50 books they've written about this line of characters. The Tom Clancy folks and stuff have been on, and it's just extraordinary. I'm like, and people just love the character. Once they fall in love with the character, they just eat it up, and you can just keep making books on it. And it's great. It's wonderful to have that sort of following.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so nice when you've sort of created a character that people love. It's so nice. That's probably the best feedback, is when people are like, oh, I want another Lena book, or I want to see more of Lena, because she's really fun to write. And I think for me, obviously writing's a job, but it's just so much easier if it's fun and I'm enjoying it.
There you go. And then why did you call it a Canary Club mystery?
To be honest, that's like a publisher thing, because they want to be able to link. I guess it's like for linking stuff and people online. Yeah. So the Canary Club is the club that Lena works at in the first book. So it's like a dirty nightclub in Soho in London, and everything sort of starts from there. And if there's a third book, I think I'm going to have some more mentions of that place, because it's kind of, the very first scene I wrote was in this place called the Canary Club. So that's why it's called that, whether anyone gets that or not. But yeah.
There you go. Well, hopefully readers love the work. Is there anything you hope that they come away from when they read it?
I mostly hope people enjoy it. It's supposed to be like a fun mystery. But I learned so much during the research, and actually my US editor was saying, I never knew this, the elevated trains in New York, for example. So I hope people learn something new that they never knew, especially if they're New Yorkers. I'd love a New Yorker to be like, I never knew that place existed or that thing happened. So yeah. There you
go. Well, it's always a fun setting, of course, to have in there in that time period. It was the roaring 20s and 30s. It was a crazy time, and it's kind of a romantic time, I think, when people look back on it, although it was probably, rife with all sorts of problems and issues, but it seems like that much hasn't changed since then.
Yeah, I think, writing historical fiction, it's amazing when you start doing research to see what's actually just repeating.
Yeah, isn't it? One thing man can learn from his history is that man never learns from his history. So thank you very much, Louise, for coming on the show. Give us a .com so people can find you on the interwebs, please.
So louisehare.com.
There you go. And thank you very much for coming on. Thanks to our audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss. See us on TikTok at Chris Voss1. Thanks to my audience for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time. And that's